I've been thinking about love all week. I had a wedding to do. Um, when was it? Wednesday. And a lot of times God doesn't give me what to talk about on Sundays until pretty far in the week, and it starts to stress me out. And I'm like, and I try to force the issue, and I say, well, I'm just going to pick an old or this or that. And God says, no, no, no. But as I was preparing for this wedding and going over the papers that I use and things like that, there's a passage of Scripture, 1 Corinthians 13, verses 1 through 3. And 1 through 13, and in that passage of Scripture was the words, love never fails. Yeah, it does. You ever had your heart broken by a man or a woman? You ever had someone stab you in the back? You ever had given yourself to someone and they reject it? It's a hard thing to do, to think. So I've been thinking about love all week. And after I left the wedding, which was great, the couple was happy, it was beautiful, my car breaks down. So I'm sitting on the side of the road for 2 hours. Cold, rainy. I wasn't feeling loved. My sermon today is entitled, Love Never Fails. What we're looking at here is one of the greatest literary passages ever penned by the Apostle Paul. Just the wording of it, it almost rolls off the tongue. It's in a sense almost poetic. What we're talking about here is the importance of love. What we're talking about today is, in this passage of Scripture, in the previous passages, it discusses our spiritual gifts. Now, I did a 4-part series on our spiritual gifts. If you're ever interested in listening to it, it's on our YouTube account. You can just go to YouTube, search my name, search the church, whatever it is. There's over 90 sermons on there, but if you go down the list, you'll find a 4-part series on our spiritual gifts, where I take each gift, I break it down, I tear it all apart, and put it all back together on the 4th one. So I'm not going to go into the spiritual gifts right now. But what Paul is dealing with here is the Corinthians, the church in Corinth, is everybody wants to have the best gift. Everybody wants their gift to be the most important. And they're showing off to each other. But they're not walking in love. They're standing there with the titles, with this, with that, the position, and they're in a sense rubbing it in each other's face. So Paul takes a moment here to set the record straight. So let's look at our passage of Scripture, and I'll delve into this a little bit. So it is 1 Corinthians 13, verses 1 through 13, and it reads, "Though I speak with the tongues of men and of angels, but have not love, I have become sounding brass or a clanging cymbal. And though I have the gift of prophecy, and I understand all mysteries and all knowledge, and though I have all the faith, so that I could remove a mountain, but I have not love, I am nothing. And though I bestow all of my goods to feed the poor, and though I give my body to be burned, but I have not love, it profits me nothing. Love suffers long and is kind. Love does not envy. Love does not parade itself, is not puffed up, does not behave rudely, does not seek its own, is not provoked, thinks no evil, does not rejoice in iniquity, but rejoices in the truth, bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things. Love never fails. But whether there are prophecies, they will fail. Whether there are tongues, they will cease. Whether there is knowledge, it will vanish away. For we know in part, and we prophesy in part. But when that which is perfect has come, then that which is in part will be done away. When I was a child, I spoke as a child. I understood as a child. I thought as a child. But when I became a man, I put away childish things. For now we see in a mirror, dimly lit, but then face to face. Now I know in part, but then I shall know just as I also am known. And now abide in faith, hope, and love, these three, but the greatest of these is love. It's just a beautiful passage. We have to speak love. It's very easy not to speak love. And in today's society, love is something that you track down, you get a hold of, and you use it to your benefit. I think we've all been in situations in our lives where we've used love. We've used our hold of someone else or other people to our own benefit. We've said we love you and really didn't mean it too much. But then we've also probably been on the other foot as well. The first chapter here in verse 1, it says, though I speak in the tongues of men and of angels, but I have not love, I have become sounding brass or a clanging cymbal. Now what this is talking about is back in those days, in those times, it was very important to know different languages. Because the world was a mix match of different languages. Each region had its own dialect. So the really successful, smart individuals knew many, many dialects. They knew how to talk in a lot of different languages. And so what they're doing is they're positioning themselves by their status. They're lifting themselves up by how many languages they can speak. But what Paul says is, though I speak with the tongues of men and of angels, but I have not love, I have become a brass or a clanging cymbal. Have you ever met someone and when they speak to you for whatever reason, it just kind of wah, 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 wah. You know that when they're talking to you, it's not because of concern from your life or your position or your job or whatever it is. It's in a sense to show how much they know. It's in a sense to show how much smarter they are than you. It's in a sense to use the biggest words. Have you ever hear somebody pray and they just can't say a simple prayer anymore? You have to use the biggest words. You have to show who you are. And the more you're around that person, the more you hear these things, the less it penetrates yourself. And they begin to sound like brass or a clanging cymbal. But when you find someone who speaks into you, who cares about what you're doing, who at work is trying to perhaps even give you negative feedback, but only to encourage you and to push you forward, you hear them. You know that there's concern in your heart. You know that there's truth within them. This stuff is real. Status and knowledge means nothing without love.